My name is Tori Parrish, and I'm the Region I Director for NABJ. Thank you for joining us tonight for our webinar titled Remote Internships, Productive Strategies for Students and Employers During COVID-19. We just have an hour, so I want to jump right into it, introduce our panelists, and get into the questions. We have Jared Henderson, a senior multimedia producer, investigative, and enterprise journalist at USA Today. Jared is also a Georgetown University professor and chair of NABJ's Visual Task Force. We have Damon Kiesel. He is the Knight Chair in Digital Editing and Producing at the Missouri School of Journalism. He's a digital media pioneer who specializes in aligning storytelling, innovation, and business strategies. And we have Andres Martinez, who is a senior editor, newsroom internships at the Wall Street Journal. He's reported for more than a dozen countries, and he was formerly a reporter, editor, and bureau chief at Bloomberg News. If you'd like to ask a question, there are two ways to do so. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see Q&A. You can type your question there. That'll be anonymous, and I'll ask the question to the panelist. If you type your question in the chat box, we all can see it. I'll still read the question to the panelist. And we'll just jump right into it, guys. So first off, can we talk about, sorry, I can go to my question. What type of support should employers provide to remote interns? We all know that COVID-19 has changed journalism possibly forever. What type of support should employers provide interns? How often should check-ins occur? What should happen during the check-ins to make sure these programs are effective? Damon? You're on, Damon, you're on mute.
Just hit mute. There we go. See, first time webinar. Here we go. Thanks for holding this webinar. It's awesome. Glad we could all join. Hopefully we have a great turnout. Looking forward to hearing some questions. I mean, the thing about internships, they're not independent studies, right? They're meant to be educational vehicles for the student. They're meant to give them exposure to the newsroom or to whatever the organization is. They're also meant to somewhat benefit the organization in many ways, but not necessarily directly through the work of the intern, right? So it's meant to be mostly about the intern. The goal is to get experience, get that coaching, get that feedback along the way. Say it's a 12-week position. That means if you're remote, not only do you have that challenge of being a new organization, you may be learning some new tasks, you're also trying to figure out how to navigate that problem of being remote, right? A lot of us have done remote. A lot of newsrooms have worked remote in the past, but trying to do those two things on top of each other at the same time, especially in the current environment, it's a huge challenge. So I think we need to be like really generous, right, with what we're doing over this summer in saying, okay, no one's ever done this. We've not ever experienced this before. We have great interns. We've got great employers. Let's make sure that we're over intentionally thinking about, you know, maybe we're not going to check in every hour, but we should be checking day. We should be having some sort of up to some extent where we're touching base at least and front load those in the first week or two or three experience until everyone sort of gets their feet on the ground, and then sort of a little bit more normally as you might in a regular internship, I think.
So how do you provide the training to someone who's not with you? You're not in the room with them. You're not seeing them face to face. How are you providing effective training to that person? Andres or Jared, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, so I mean, we're preparing already for our summer internship, and you know, I go back to what Damon said. No one's ever done this before. What everyone is living through, I think, what young journalists have been doing for the last week. You guys are going to experience things that no one has ever lived through. I think we're going to come out stronger for that. Now, that said, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be extremely challenging. You know, there were already few jobs in journalism, and now there are even fewer, and there were fewer internships, and there are going to be even fewer probably across the industry. But those of you who survive, who end up having, you know, that hustle to be in the industry, are really going to be prepared in ways that a lot of us were not at your age, the challenges and all that. And so as journalism institutions, as publications, what we really have to make sure that we're doing is, like Damon says, those check-ins, right? Key really early on, making sure that the interns feel like getting the training they need to write the stories, produce the stories, go on air, whatever it is exactly, and then skills, and then you can acknowledge them for that and say, hey, you know, you were really into in this story. This is the role that you played. And so there has to be a lot of this feedback so that you can event and very quickly show this is what you're contributing. So maybe it's not like a lot, like Damon said, some of these today are a lot about bigger projects or maybe having contributions at the end of your internship. It might be about smaller. It might be about helping very established reporters and editors and producers on bigger stories, getting assistance lines, things that you can show that you're actually contributing something. So again, we're going to learn a lot from this. And if this kind of sort of situation happens again, where there is another outbreak, I think we'll have learned a lot of lessons. And specifically you, the student journalists on the call, will be much better prepared than any of us, to be honest. You guys are coming into an industry where you're basically being asked to sort of read things done.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Carl, anonymous question. What are the tips for students who are having a hard time finding an internship? What would you offer up first, Jared? How should they respond?
Sure. Thanks, Carlos, for your question. I appreciate it. I think there's a couple of things that we have to acknowledge, right, during these really unprecedented times, not just for ourselves as humans and as a society, but also as journalists, right? And so Andres talked a little bit about the idea of what it meant to come out of college a couple years ago. Like I was part of that 2007, 2008, really tough time to find a job with the recession and everything of that nature. One of the things I'll say is don't be so dependent on an internship, right? At this point in our lives, things have changed, things have switched, and now we have to find a chance to pivot and figure out other ways that we can be telling stories. And so one of the things I want to make sure people are leaving here with are tools that they can take back with them, especially our students, to be able to keep doing good work, but also encouragement and the understanding that, months from now, years from now, prospective employers, prospective clients are going to ask you, what were you doing during this time? And it would be really beneficial for you to have something to show that you've done, even if it's not related to COVID-19 at all, but just showing us that you have the ability to tell stories. And so as a professor, it's about getting your reps in, right? It's about practice. It's about going out and telling these stories the best way that you can. As a journalist and somebody who's in the newsroom, it's also about understanding that some of those opportunities are going to come, right? But they're just going to come later in terms of being in the newsroom, understanding the dynamics of, a news environment and things of that nature. But for now, really the people who are going to succeed during these times are the people who are going out and are the go-getters, right? The people who are going out and taking initiative to find internships or make internship opportunities for themselves. So don't be discouraged, keep looking, okay? And if you don't have one, don't think it's the end of the world. I know we have plans for our lives, but it's okay if we have a little detour every now and then.
And to build on what Jared's saying, you got to keep these skills sharp and you got to keep on growing. And maybe internships are not the route. I think a lot of us, if we pick apart how we got into journalism, I never thought that I was going to go outside the US and be a reporter. I thought I was going to be a crime reporter. I was based on the border in Texas, loved that. Thought I was going to keep on bouncing around American newspapers. That's not what I did. And I ended up going in a completely different direction. And so that's how careers develop. So if you can't find that internship for this summer, for your school year, make sure that you're doing all the things that you need to be prepared. So, if that means getting a job, think of your school librarians. They're an incredible resource. They know about jobs that are available, transcribing, working with doctoral researchers. If you know foreign languages, you can help translate. These are all really, really important skills that help you and make you more valuable to newsroom in the future. If you're a producer, right, and you can go and let's be honest, you got to pay the bills. You need benefits. If you need a job, you need a detour. Probably someone you guys have all heard of, Karen Ho. She's now at Quartz. When she got out of school, she could not find a journalism job back in 2008. So she went and worked at a bank. She says that helped her to interviewing skills. So the path, like Jared said, is not always ideal, perfect. You are being challenged in ways that none of us on this call as professionals have ever been challenged. You are going to be better journalists for it, but it's going to be very difficult. So again, be creative, stay active, keep your skills really sharp, and be able to say, this is what I did during that period where there were very few jobs, when there were very few internships.
Okay, thank you. Following with what you both were saying about being creative, in the chat, I posted a couple of links for resources. One is a list of fellowships. Fellowships provide training. They're not the typical internship, but they're a way to provide training in a newsroom environment or remote newsroom environment. You all want to talk about what a fellowship actually is for those who might not know? Hello?
I think Damon can speak a little bit more towards this, but I can speak about it from the perspective of somebody who's gone through a fellowship. I was a fellowship at the Reynolds Journalism Institute at the University of Missouri, 2018, where it was my job, my passion to pitch an idea, a topic of study, an idea to figure out, to try to solve, right? And so my idea was, how do we convert visual journalists in newsrooms to become filmmakers, or to become the next generation of workforce that could be on a Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, right? And so what fellowships really allow us to do, and for younger and for more seasoned, more veteran journalists, is to take a time out and just say like, hey, let me focus on this one thing. And there's a ton of them out there. Tori, I'm thankful that you posted that list, because they're all over, and they're for a lot of different things, right? I think about University of Michigan, Stanford University. I think about the Neiman Fellowships. There's just so many different opportunities out there. But maybe, Damon, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about how to prepare, or, you know, how do people find out if they are eligible for such things?
Yeah. So I had a fellowship probably mid-career with Pointer, which is different, a little bit different than what we're probably talking about for on the student side or the recent graduate side. And very much like Jared was saying, in mid-career, it's an opportunity to sort of stop, sort of think, study, sort of refocus your attention. I think for recent graduates, and there's certainly fellowships, I'm sponsoring one at the Dallas Morning News this summer for a recent graduate. It's definitely not just an internship, but it can be a bridge, especially in this time, a bridge between school or graduate school, undergraduate, graduate school, and like that first or second real job, where maybe you're doing something that's a little different than what you intend for your career to be, possibly, and you're able to study. So it's like a continuation of education. Like the New York Times, I think, has gone away from internships, and they're doing fellowships, right, where you're learning there for a year. ProPublica has got fellowships where they're working on specific projects, Report for America type projects. So it's kind of like a job, especially as a postgrad, but it's a slightly different category where it really is, it's kind of like an internship, but it's also kind of like a job in some cases. Different than the Neiman fellowships and the ones in at Stanford, et cetera, which are more mid-career type targets.
Okay. Thank you. I've also posted a link to Media Mentors. This is a list of mentors who have volunteered their time to offer free half-hour one-on-one sessions for advice. These are professional journalists who offer one-on-one advice, guidance, general questions about navigating the media industry. I highly suggest looking into that, just to give you some guidance, and they're professionals who are in the field, very useful. Jared, do you want to talk about the National Press Photographers Association resources? That link is posted there too.
Yes, ma'am. So Tori posted a link for the MPPA Student Town Hall resources list. It is a list of softwares that are for free. And again, I'm about leaving people with tangible things that they can get from these webinars, right? So if you're a student who might not have access to the Adobe Creative Suite or any type of software to edit, right? Check your institution, check your college or university. Some university systems are able to download the software and have it for their students for free. But at the bottom line, the resource that I always tell people about is DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve is a color grading software, but that has a great nonlinear editor attached to it, an editor like Final Cut or Premiere. And so definitely download that. This is also a great time to practice telling stories. For me, I'm a visual journalist, right? So practicing stories without my camera, practicing my writing, practicing my animation skills. In that sheet, you'll also find Red Giant has a promotion right now for free software. Their entire suite, which is like thousands of dollars typically, is available to you, especially for students and educators. But really, it's just a list to keep us informed. Has some suggestions for like Facebook groups that you can join to stay updated on what other young journalists are doing, as well as showing some examples of stories that people are telling now. So if you're kind of struggling about what kind of story to tell, go check that out. That has great resources and examples from Houston Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle, all around the nation. So definitely check that out. And then also, I also have a list of resources on my website. It's just my name.com. I'll post it in the chat. But it's under what I call hot sauce to my students, your own flavor, right? And so check that out, jaredhenderson.com. You'll find a list of resources there as well.
Thanks, Jared. Going to answer some more questions.
Yeah.
One of them was anonymous question: tips for virtual onboarding.
Yes. Yeah, I have some thoughts on that. It's a great question, and this is so important, especially most internships probably are going to be remote this year. The key here is this is actually an opportunity, right? We're thinking like, oh, being remote, that's going to be a problem. It's going to be not as good. All right. Remote means you can be in any meeting. You can be in every meeting, right? You can see discussions as long as you ask the question and the newsroom invites you in. You can get a much better sense of what's going on because every meeting is now in this little box on your computer, right? So as long as you have time, you can sit in on the budget meeting, you can sit on the planning meeting, you can sit on the photo meeting, you can sit on the investigative team. Whoever you can convince or your manager can convince, and it shouldn't be hard, to let the intern sit in and learn, right? You can sit in and learn, and it's not so much, I mean, obviously there's a checklist at the beginning of onboarding, like how do you log in? That stuff's good and fine, we can figure that out, but the learning the culture and learning the organization and the people, that's the real important part of onboarding. And I think that's just as easy or maybe easier to get all in sort of one or two or three sittings across a couple, since we're all sitting in front of Zoom as a profession at this point. So I think it's a great opportunity.
I have to echo what Damon's saying. I think, the best journalists have always been the most persistent, the most curious. They pester, they hustle, they annoy. And if you can do that from day one in a way that's constructive, in a way that you're like, okay, hey, where's the style book? Do you guys have a digital version, right? And that doesn't matter if you're writing or producing or doing photos or video. You want to know what the sort of, vocabulary, the language of the place you're working at is, what their dictionary is, literally, right? And you do that, and you start saying, okay, well, I can actually help with this, right? Oh, you have this morning meeting. You need someone to take notes. Come up with solutions. You're going to have so much time to yourself because it is remote. Don't be afraid to push the boundaries. If you hear that a story is going on, be like, well, you know what? I know a nurse at that hospital. I can make a call if you need it. And so in a way, you have an opportunity to sort of use your voice more than you would, walking into a room with 30, more experienced, older newsroom people, let's say, in the morning meeting, right, where it's intimidating. Here, and also use your digital skills. Let's be honest, as young people, as young journalists, you are more adept at some of these technologies. Be like, look, I can do that in a second for you guys. I can build that. I can edit that. I can do this. I can do that. So don't think, hey, I'm going into a reporter covering X, Y, and Z. I can't do that. Yes, you have your goals. You have the things you need to do, but stretch yourself. That's what's going to show people your value.
Talk about, as not even just an intern, but a working full-time adult, the importance of flexibility and going beyond just what the basics of your job are to make yourself valuable.
Look, I think the flexibility, that's what gets you far in journalism. Fancy titles, degrees, doesn't do anything for you. It's being flexible, showing that there's a big breaking story or there's a huge project that needs to be undertaken and you're willing to contribute to it. I think that's how I've been successful in my career. I think it's how the people I admire and respect and have gone for mentoring. That's how they did it, right? It's like, I don't know anything about data journalism. I'm going to jump in and I'm going to learn it myself, for example. I'm not citing my own, but I'm just saying in general, like a skill, which is so important in newsroom. And that's how you get ahead. You're flexible, right? Hey, you're used to doing the main write-up of a big story, but you know that these other people are just exhausted because COVID is requiring everyone to work so many hours. You do some assistance, you make some calls for people. So you've got to be flexible, you've got to adapt, you've got to learn new skills. It's not about how you came in, you're sort of redefining the job every day.
Exactly, thank you. We have a question from Charlie Goldsmith. He says, in regards to networking, who would you recommend reaching out to now so we can be in a better position a year from now?
I'll start there. We're here as part of the National Association of Black Journalists organization. Start with NABJ. I can tell you firsthand that both my first internship and my first opportunity outside of school was because of NABJ, working with the student projects and then just meeting mentors through there. And so if you don't have somebody to talk to, that mentorship post that Tori did was really excellent. And then also just talk to people that you know and trust. They could be your peers. I love Issa Rae. She talks about networking across, right? It doesn't always have to be networking up. You don't always have to try to figure out what Oprah can do for you. You can look to your left and your right and see your people and figure out how you can create your own work. I love what Andres said about having digital first capability, right? Like everybody should be Tabitha Brown. Like everybody should be Tabitha Brown. You should find the thing that you do really well, like that, and then figure it out and just put it together because you have the resources and the ability to do it. And so this is like the era of no no's, if that makes any sense. Like whatever you decide to do right now, you can do, and you can do at a very high level. But I would say in terms of like finding those relationships and partners, start across, talk to your administrators, your teachers, your instructors, your other peers, and find somebody to bounce your ideas off of, and hopefully somebody that can connect you to a professional. And I know we're always open for that kind of stuff. Like a lot of us are thrilled to have people in our newsrooms or people outside who we mentor. Region I has a mentorship program. I'm sure other regions do as well. But contact your regional directors as well and ask them, hey, do you have anybody who I could talk to about these things? So Tori's Region I president, chair, I'm not sure the proper title. Director. Hit up Tori, you know what I'm saying? Hit up the directors and make sure that you're vocal about needing help and needing some assistance.
And thank you, Jared. I was just talking to someone recently about mentors, and he said one really important thing about mentors is not to just take. The mentor should not just hear from you when you need something.
It's so true.
Call and say, hey, Mr. Bob, how are you? I saw that great article you wrote, or I saw that great story you did. It can't be just a one-sided take and you don't offer anything back. So I think that's really important too.
I think just one small point there. Be always constructive in all these conversations. So to sort of build on what you're saying, Tori, the next time you got to go to your mentor, either have a new story, have a new pitch that you want to discuss. Don't come and be like, I don't know what I'm doing, like guide me. No, come with something. Even if it's like, just want to spit an idea with you, want to get your advice, but be always constructive and consider that relationship with a mentor, consider that relationship with the people who are hiring. Almost like you're a journalist, you're always a journalist. You never turn it off. You don't walk out of the office and turn it off. So when you're looking for the job, when you're looking for advice, you're still a journalist. Come with questions, come with topics, make sure it's focused. And that way you'll never be a pest. That way people will be like, okay, this person is incredibly considerate and is thoughtful. I want to talk to them.
So probably my first 4 jobs were through contacts I made when I was a photographer through MPPA, through the regional organization, maybe more than the first 4 jobs, right? So that type of networking, NABJ, any other local ONA, if you have a local organization, right? Whatever that is. But beyond that, you're in school, you've got professors, you've got alumni, right? You should be linked in with everyone you've ever had a class with, including your classmates, right? And building those networks, any alumni that you run into at events or that come onto campus, right? LinkedIn, and then work in those networks, right? This isn't, I think students a little too often are like, what's LinkedIn? Why is it important? To them, it's like Twitter, right? That's for the old people, right? I'm like, well, again, email and LinkedIn are the tools that are used in business. You want to get on those tips and like be working it. And if, again, not to sort of sound like a broken record, we're going to be doing virtual events like this for months, right? So you're going to have direct access to experts, and you're then going to email them or follow them on Twitter. Or you're going to connect with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I saw you on the webinar. Okay, you just got connected with like 4 people who are leading in the industry. I'm not speaking of this panel necessarily, but sure, right? But go to these events, connect with people, follow up, ask questions, and then exactly, when you do have a mentor, coming with a definite sort of question and a plan as opposed to, I don't know what I'm doing, a little more productive on everyone's part, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Damon. Good tips. Another question. Also, for anyone coming late, if you'd like to ask a question, if you hover at the bottom of your screen, you see Q&A. That's how you can ask an anonymous question, and I'll read it to the panelists. Or you can type it in chat, and we'll all see it, and I'll still read it to the panelists. We have a question. What are the most important competencies that an intern can possess? Andre? Who's somebody?
I think for a lot of people, one of the challenges coming into a new newsroom environment is learning CMS, content management systems. Understand how the organization works, and understanding how to do your job, essentially, right? So you have to figure out, those are some of the competencies that you definitely need to have as soon as you get through the door, and understanding their process. Before coming through the door, definitely communication is like at the top of that list, in my opinion. Like in this digital age where we're going back and forth on Zoom and Skype and Google Hangouts and all this other kind of stuff, you have to be somebody that communicates well, that organizes him or herself well, and that can make sure that you know what's going on in your news organization. Because I think the dangerous part about what we're doing is that it's very easy to get lost in who does what and who's in charge of what. Because some of those memory things that we have when we're in the newsroom, we say, okay, that section is breaking news, this section is investigations, these are my photo video people over here, those are the just the facts and live people. Like, that is something that you can do through muscle memory that we don't necessarily have anymore, sitting in our living room or kitchen or wherever you're at doing Zooms. So make sure that you, one, understand CMS once you get to the door, and understand your internship, what your roles and responsibilities are. Before coming into the door, understand that communication is essential, and you have to be a very active and a very perceptive person on the team.
Ask questions. So if you don't know, if you're a little unsure about what they're asking you to do or what the assignment is, don't be afraid. I just started a job 3 weeks ago, and I find myself asking questions all the time. And I know some of them are not great, but it's because I didn't understand what they were asking for. And that's the only way you get things done. When you start assuming, it leads down a bad road, and then you're turning the assignment in, and it's like, that's not what I asked for. Hours have gone by. So just be like, you know what? Was that 200 words? Was that 3 minutes? Who did you want me to talk to? What are we going for with this story? Just ask, and it's fine. Communicate.
Yeah, I have three, but Andres just hit on one of my favorites, which is, early on in a job, and this includes during a job interview and early on in an internship, that's when you get to ask the dumb questions, right? And there really are no dumb questions, but once we've been there for 6 months, we feel like we should know everything, right? When you're new, you don't have to know everything, and no one expects you to. That's when you ask the questions. So, but my 3 things, I'll just give 3 quick ones, my skills. Curiosity, we've talked about that a lot in one way or another. You got to be curious. You got to wonder why. You got to ask yourself why, and you got to be able to see around the corners of your own assumptions, right? You got to step outside your own experience and go, okay, why? Why do we have 300 words for this? Why is it this many big of a photo? What is it? I mean, those are simple ones. You got to be a boundary crosser. And I think Jared just sort of said this. You got to be willing to go across departments, even outside of editorial, and be curious again about what people do. How does their job contribute to the overall product? Why is it important? Well, what's important to them, right? And then part 3 of that is systems thinking. Be able to put that curiosity and that boundary crossing. And this is just journalism, right? Being able to put those 2 things together to understand how the system works, so then you can figure out where you can put your time in to change the system, whatever that means to you, in the most effective way, to have the most impact and feel the most reward for sort of what you're doing in the organization, as opposed to just, sort of being a gear, a cog in the machine. You're like, hey, I understand how this works. I can make a difference, and here's how.
So you're taking initiative as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. This might be a question for Jared. It says, for those of us in broadcast, what's a good tip to help students with internships when social distancing is being practiced and it's for the most part impossible for students to even enter the building?
My good brother right there. I'm not sure specifically in broadcast, right? I can't speak directly to broadcast. What I can say is that it really is about just trying to find opportunities that still exist, right? A lot of people have removed opportunities or taken them back or scaled them back. And it's understandable because we haven't dealt with anything like this before. I think the main piece of encouragement is to tell them to keep going, keep pursuing whatever it is that they were going to do during that internship program, to do it in our own backyard. There's not very many times in our history where we've had a global story that everybody is connected to in some kind of way. So the real thing is like, tell the story that you can tell. And so no, it's not in the studio. You're not getting that, that experience with the lights and the equipment and the cameras and understanding, how to put together scripts and all that kind of stuff. But there's no reason why you can't start practicing that stuff in your home, right? So try to find opportunities. And for the folks that are out there, you have to ask your organization, what are we doing? I had to ask USA Today because I didn't want to get on this panel and give some misinformation, right? So I know for us, we're trying to honor the current interns that have already signed their commitments, but I know we're not taking any more. And so for the organization standpoint, we have to put some time and work into understanding what that means and to have them come into a structured environment where we know what the intended outcome of their time with us is going to be from now on, because we don't have that same experience that we had in the past where we can just come and figure it out as we go. So it's going to take a little bit of work on our end to figure out how to make sure that people get the best experience that they possibly can.
True. Thank you.
So we have a TV station on campus that's most of the staff, most of the journalists are students. So this has been a problem for us for about a month now, since we basically evacuated all of our newsrooms. We have very few people, very few students in place actually doing work in the buildings, but they all came and got their remote kits, and all the gear got delivered to somebody's garage, and everyone went and picked it up sort of one by one. They're all out there with their remote kits doing the work, and they've got a green screen tacked to the wall at home in 1 or 2 lights, right? I mean, there's no difference in the work in terms of actually telling you're wearing a face mask and you're using a boom mic instead of a lav maybe to wire somebody up, right? But it's all the same work. It's just a matter of being really clear, and everyone's doing this right now, being really clear. What are the risks? What are the precautions we're taking? What's our process? How do we handle certain situations, right? It's new ground rules, but the work's the same, just maybe from 6 feet away instead of 3 feet away in many cases.
Gotcha. Thank you. Real quick, I'm going to go back. Andres posted 2 resources here. Business Insider and BBC are also looking for freelancers to pitch. If you go on the chat and look at 6:43 p.m., you'll see, what is this, a Twitter?
Yes, it's a Twitter handle, and I'll put the other one for the Business Insider person. I just couldn't find it easily, but okay. They've been making a lot of noise online. They want pitches, they want stories. It's sort of on top of what Jared and Damon have been talking about with the, specific broadcast internship and whatnot. We have to be honest, right? Like there weren't enough internships before, and there are not enough right now, and who knows what the environment will be like, a year from now. And so people have to be realistic, and so know your audiences, be aware of what you know. So maybe you're from, a part of Oklahoma, right? And you're stuck at home with your parents right now in Oklahoma, and there's a need for certain kinds of stories. Start doing those stories. You don't need that much equipment compared to 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago. You just don't need that much equipment. You can do it with an iPhone. And you'll look 100 times better than my video right now, which I should probably learn how to do it properly. The point I'm trying to get at is be active. Make sure you have your website. If you find a great story and you can't find that outlet, you can't find that internship, you're not finding places to pitch it, start building an audience. And again, this is something that you can show to people in 3 months, 6 months, a year. Be like, well, while coronavirus was happening, this is what I was doing. I was breaking news. I was doing analysis. I was putting out video that no one was doing. The local news stations were following me. The local paper was. You've got to be more creative if you want this.
And freelancing is an option too. If you can't get an internship, your internship got suspended, freelance.
Exactly. I mean, internships are not just I'm the head of the internship program of the Journal, and I love it. And, it's one of the best ones out there, if not the best. And we can, that's just not the only way to the paper, or to other news organizations, so you've got to also be creative, and just find solutions.
This is the space where you don't just tell somebody what you're gonna do, you show up with something in your hand, right? Like you show them what you've been working on. And it doesn't have to be breaking news. It doesn't have to be you out telling a very, academic story, right? It can be something that you turn inward. We've seen more journalists turn their camera inwards to tell their story than we have in a long time. And so, for me, my grandmother passed. And so how do I tell that story? Which initially didn't start out that way, right? It was just, my mom knows what I do. I take my camera with me everywhere. So of course I'm going to take a couple shots as we're trying to figure out how to honor her memory, how to go into the funeral home and, go to the burial ground. Like, what does that even look like? And so I'm just now kind of starting to understand the power of being able to tell some of those stories that way, that are intimate, that are personal, and that you don't necessarily look to start doing initially, but end up being something to help tell the story and give it context.
Thank you. Another question from anonymous audience member. Any advice for a graduating senior looking for entry-level on-air reporting job?
We have quite a few. I have a senior capstone, and quite a few of those students, they don't all want to be directly on air, but a lot of them do want on-air jobs. I mean, there's still hiring going on. There's still interviewing going on at local affiliates. You might not be getting, it might be tighter to get into a top 50 affiliate, but there's 100 other markets, right, they're hiring in, TV's certainly still ahead of the curve in terms of the business model, ahead of newspapers. So that's certainly a lot of hiring going on there. Obviously, I'm not going to say as much as there would have been 3 months ago. That's going to come back. That's going to be the first place it's going to come back, is on the TV side, right? Because they're still making money. We have an election coming up. They're going to make a lot of ad money on elections, especially if there's fewer rallies. There's going to be probably more advertising, right? TV is going to recover in terms of the hiring cycle, I think, probably quicker than sort of the traditional print or the digital media at this point. I would just keep plugging at it. It's going to happen.
And another thing to think about is the fact that, oh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, go ahead.
You want to come back to that?
Yeah, I'll come back in a second. I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay. That's all right. Someone asked if the recording will be sent afterward. Yes, it will. And it will also, there'll be a link on the NABJ website as well.
Okay, I remember now.
You want to add it, Andres?
Yeah, just really quick. No path is perfect. It's never a straight line. Your goal is to work at your hometown paper, to work at the New York Times, to work at NBC, to work at CNN, to work at ProPublica, whatever it is, right? It's never a perfect line. You may learn very quickly that you want to do another kind of journalism. You might learn that you want to go on TV, but you've been preparing for print. The point is, take those opportunities as they come. And so if it's in a smaller market than you wanted to go originally, hey, it's journalism. It's public service, public value. Do it. You're going to get better. You're going to get more opportunities. And you're going to learn about yourself. So it's never a straight line.
Tori, you already responded in the comments, but from Rod Carter, I think that point is exactly right. A lot of our students are applying for producer roles at TV stations, or sort of hybrid roles, or a little bit on air, a little bit producing, right? That's great experience. Even if you want to only go one way or the other, take the opportunity to do both and learn. Maybe you do like it, to Andre's point. You hadn't considered sort of that path,
And just think if you're a producer who learns how to go on air, or an on-air person who goes to be a producer, in a pinch, you are so much more valuable simply than a producer, simply than an artist. I used to do a lot of TV when I was at Bloomberg, and I'm not a TV person, but you learn a lot of skills. It helped me with my writing. Sometimes you've got to figure out how to say something in 12 seconds. And that's a lot harder than writing, and writing is hard.
Yeah, that's true. And I know I'm in print, but to Rod's point, TV stations have a dire need for producers. Everybody wants to be on camera, but it's really hard to fill those positions behind the camera. And there's a big need for producers right now. It's a good point, Rod. Thank you. Rod is our Region 3 director. Here's a question. What are some of the best strategies to set up remote interns for success? Often I notice young people seem hesitant and not proactive more than not when doing any internship, but especially remote.
Nobody wants to be the first to answer that because it's a hard question. I think this question probably is targeting at both employers and students, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've answered some of it. I'm just rereading the question, so I'm looking off camera. I think a lot of the stuff that we've talked about addresses this, and it's really, you got to accept that this isn't normal times, right? You got to accept that. And another question down a little bit lower is basically like basically boils down to how do we not be too needy as interns in this situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question you get from interns and job seekers in good times, right? I haven't heard back from the hiring manager in 2 weeks. Should I call them? Well, not yet. Maybe an email in a week, right? So trying to figure out how to calibrate that need for feedback for your own comfort versus your manager or hiring manager has got like 150 other people coming at them at once. So really, I think it just comes down to transparency and honesty. And when you get that 10 minutes with your manager saying, hey, I know that whatever we did that last week, that project, that seemed to go well. I'm happy with the feedback, but I really need a little bit more feedback on this because I'm new and I don't know what the expectation is or what the process is or who I'm supposed to be working with, right? Just being transparent. You're an intern or you're an entry-level employee. That's the time you get to ask those questions and be transparent and honest and just as straightforward as you can be. Be yourself as much as you can, really.
So do they need these remote interns? I hate to use the term, but oftentimes you'll say interns need babysitting. They were going to require more because they're remote. Should there be more flexibility in that you have to check in maybe a couple times a day or no?
I'll answer, then let somebody else answer. I get the question like babysitting. We sort of use that. I think it's more like we have to develop an entirely new way and an intentional way to do this with the check-ins and the feedback and right closing that loop, as opposed to what we too often do in a real newsroom setting, which is, oh, everyone's here, we're all in the loop, we all get it, and really the intern's sitting there feeling left out half the time, right? That's because we're making assumptions. I think in this case, we just need to realize we can't make assumptions, and this is the opportunity for the intern to say, this is new, we don't know what we're doing, you don't know what we're doing, I don't know what we're doing, we got to follow up, we got to be more proactive about it as opposed to making the assumptions. You can break through that wall now because no one's ever done this before, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's a two-way street, right? So if we're asking the students to be flexible, we've got to be flexible. And I think we've all talked about that already. And again, like Damon said, be intentional, right? So intentionality has to go both ways. Someone brought up the idea of, well, when do I contact the recruiter? Always come with something. Yes, I'm reaching out because I applied 2 weeks ago. I just broke some news that's been followed by a few, outlets. I just wrote a really nice, script that got aired the other night. I just come with a talking point. Now, I think on the flip side, when you're in an internship, you're gonna have to do that as well. Don't think about being annoying. If you've got a point to your conversation, something that you need to be addressed and be direct about, be direct. Do that. Now, the mentor, the person you work with every day, they're gonna have to start thinking more about that as well. Wait a minute, I've got my morning call where I check in with my student every morning. What are we actually gonna talk about? What's the point of the call today? They've been on the morning meeting, they know what the goals are for the day, they know what the big stories are, but are we gonna talk about that issue we had yesterday? Are we gonna talk about how this person can improve on that or this or new opportunities? I think that's gonna be, the onus is gonna be a lot more on these sort of mentors now.
Yeah, no, like even before all this hit, I always tell every intern, like, you're the master of your own fate, right? Like, so when you come into these opportunities, one of the things I challenge everybody to do is to write down 5 things that you want to accomplish during that time. 5 simple things. They don't have to be big. You can say, I want a front page photo. I want to, contribute to an investigative piece. I want to have lunch once a week with somebody, something like that. or like a digital brunch, right? Like we can be creative in these times to try to get to know people, right? But again, like this is your opportunity to really speak up and say, hey, this is what I would like to get out of this opportunity. And how can we go about putting together a plan to make sure that we accomplish those things? And so it's possible. Just keep moving towards it. And then like everybody else is saying, have a goal in mind, have your intention up front so that people know what you need.
You know, the thing we sort of been talking about it, but not directly, is this is all great advice, and all the students and interns were there going, yeah, but there's this huge power differential, right, between me and the manager or whoever that person is, right? And it does take some courage on the student or the new employee's part to step up, right? But that is, I mean, that's just part of life to some extent. But on the flip side, it's the responsibility of the employer to be providing the environment where the intern is able and willing and is going to step forward and even ask a dumb question, right? So again, Andres was saying it's a two-way street. The students got to have the courage to take that leap, but the employer has to have created that environment where they're willing to take that risk.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's newsroom integrity, right? Like we want to make sure that we have workplaces that are safe and open for all people to participate and to participate freely and make sure that people have opportunity, especially those who have traditionally been denied it, right? So we have to be open and honest. And if we want to, I mean, we're at NABJ, let's talk about the elephant in the room. If we want newsrooms that are more diverse and open, we have to make sure that we're open to different ideas and allow people opportunities. And so this is one of the biggest ways that gap of resources that existed before for people is kind of shrinking. And so you have to make sure that you are understand what you need to be able to say it and figure out what the best route is for your success.
Exactly. Thanks, guys. I posted another link. I'm posting a link for Indeed. I just searched for internships. It has some internships there that are recently posted. What I also would encourage people to do is actually call the media outlet or maybe email the media outlets, because not everybody's going to post everything online. A lot of times, quite frankly, people offer jobs to who they know. So don't be afraid to go old school and just pick up the phone. People might be busy. Email to ask, what opportunities do you have available for freelancing, for internships, for a college credit? I think sometimes people get too caught up in, well, if it's not online, then nothing exists. I think pick up the phone and ask a question.
Remember, the job hustle is journalism. You're showing how good of a journalist you are. You know, oh, there's this job that I hear that you're hiring for. Well, I didn't post it. I want to know how you found out about it. Again, show me your skills. Show me you're prepared. Come with story ideas. It's the key.
Exactly. Another question. Earlier it was mentioned that students shouldn't just take from their mentors. Other than asking how are they doing or telling them you like their recent article, what else can students do to give back to their mentors?
So one really great piece of advice I got really early in my career, what makes somebody valuable isn't what they know or what they can do. It's about who they can connect you with, right? And so to be really valuable really early is to be a connector, to say these two people need each other and they need to communicate, right? Or there's an subject expert here and we're doing a story on this. I can connect you with this person. That makes you really valuable in a newsroom environment. Now here's the secret. Don't tell nobody. Do you have to actually know these people in real life? Probably not. But can you do some research and find that subject expert that's right down the street that you can connect to, somebody who's writing a story on XYZ? Absolutely. And so try to be the person who is able to solve problems. The problem solver is the person in the newsroom that gets tapped often, and often is the person that gets to go up to the opportunities that they really want because they're learning how to, that's what we're doing. We're problem solvers. This is what we do every day.
Yeah, being adept. All right. I'm going to the next question. How do we not overwhelm our directors or supervisors while on an internship?
I think we might have covered some of that in some of the previous. It's again that transparency, the being clear of what everyone's needs are, especially given that you might be remote or everything's sort of new. This is tough. Again, this is the power differential problem. We're worried about scaring off the supervisor or having them feel like we're needy, right? But what they know about you isn't just that one question you asked today that may have been something that you needed to know and maybe you should have known. Who knows? You're brand new. You should know everything. I think it just comes back to, I think Jared was saying and Andres was saying, being honest, being clear about your needs. But you know what? They hired you for a reason, right? We're not just pulling tickets out of a bag and going, oh, this person got the internship. You go through a process, you went to school, you're there for a reason. Own that, right? And then just be confident that as long as the employer is creating an environment that's friendly enough, or like, you know, you're not overwhelmed. Or if you are, they're going to tell you, right? They'll send you that signal. They're like, okay, I don't have time for 5 calls today, but how about we talk tomorrow at 10, right? You got to trust them to also do their job.
Exactly. Thank you. Really quick, the time is now 7:51. It's really briefly for all of the panelists to give their contact information, website, social media, how you can be reached, and then we'll get back into the webinar and finish by 8 p.m. So we'll start at the top. Damon has his email address, his Twitter.
So I got nothing else to say. That was it.
Okay, keep it moving. All right. Jared Henderson. You're on mute, Jared.
I got to learn how to do that, Damon. That was really dope. I think it's just a background that you added to your other background and then you switched them. That was cool. All right. So problem solving, told you. So I dropped everything in the chat earlier, but it's just my name, Jarrad Henderson. On any social media platform, you can search me, or if everything else fails, #StoryBay. You can find me anywhere on that.
#StoryBay. Okay. All right. Andres?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @amartinez, WSJ, and email, it's my first name, andres.martinez@wsj.com. If you're going to email, come with ideas, come strong.
Okay, thank you. And I'm Tori Parrish, Region 1 Director, and I can be reached at tori.nabj@gmail.com, and Tori's Tory. And my Twitter is just Tori Parrish 1. Okay. All right, we'll go back into it. We have a few more questions before we wrap up at 8. One question is, what's the advantage of starting a YouTube channel and helping students to get better at telling stories? Go ahead.
I think anything you start, again, don't wait for the internship, don't wait for the freelancing, don't wait for the job. Build that portfolio, You as young journalists in 2020 are in a better place than Damon, Jared, and I were when we started our careers. You didn't really have the tools to start your own portfolio, even as a writer, for example. Where would you publish it? You know, when I started in 2002 or 3, whatever year it was, you know, let's not even talk about TV production. You have an opportunity to do that with so few tools, and you're more talented than a lot of us were at that age. So do it, keep on building it, and make sure that you're showing people and that you're getting advice to sort of make it better.
Yeah, if you don't have that LinkedIn page now, go ahead and build it. You haven't put together a website yet, go ahead and start it. But these are the types of opportunities to kind of like get ourselves ahead so that people can contact us. One, you know, I've seen all these posts on different social media sites. I'm in photography, right? So I see a lot of posts from photo editors, and they're like, I hate to see another website with somebody that doesn't have a phone number on their website. And he was like, just get a Google number, right? But you're making it hard for me to pay you and give you money because I can't find you anywhere. So make sure that you're paying attention, update all your information, you know, update your websites, find those stories that you've done the last year and update all that stuff.
And LinkedIn's critical. Haven't you all been contacted, at least from prospective employers on LinkedIn? I think we all have. LinkedIn is critical in this industry. And make sure that it's clean and that there are no spelling mistakes on your LinkedIn. Saying that too.
Yes. Find an editor. Please find an editor.
Yes. Another question. I got an internship for summer and they haven't said if it will be remote. I reached out about a month ago. They didn't have an update quite yet. Is it too pushy to reach out again?
Can I answer this? Because I just had this week. We're doing, we have a diversity program where we're sending students out to nonprofit newsrooms. So we do like 5 of those, and I'm actually doing a fellowship too. So I think 2 or 3 of those in the past couple of weeks, we've been reaching out. Well, guess what? Everyone in these newsrooms are flat out. They haven't slept in a month. they're not thinking a week ahead, and they're trying to figure out what to do with an intern maybe that's coming in 2 weeks, but their budget's up in the air and staffing and all this stuff going on. Absolutely reach out. Absolutely reach out. This is not a question of you're being a pest. This is a question of they know they need to prioritize this problem, and they just can't because they're putting out so many fires on a daily, hourly basis, right? Email first, right? Phone call second, Twitter third, LinkedIn if all else fails, right? Just keep working up the chain and then start over, not on an hourly basis, right? But on a regular enough basis, and then, find someone else who you know that knows the people or whatever. If you have that kind of connection, ask your professor to reach out, right? We're running out of time. We got 2 or 3 weeks before our internships start. We need to get that stuff nailed down. Newsrooms know it. They're just in a crisis that they've never seen before. So they're not going to blame you for reaching out. I may have oversold that point, but you get the drift.
Not at all. We got 4 minutes left real quick. Someone says, are any of the panelists currently looking for assistants or consultants? Anyone?
Not currently, but that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it.
Okay.
Keep that same enthusiasm.
Yeah, take an initiative.
Yeah.
All right, next up. I've always wanted to be a general assignment reporter, but it looks like more people are looking for beat reporters. If I'm interested in everything and learning as I go, how do I select an issue to tackle in order to look more hireable?
I think that might be a misconception. I got to be honest. I value general assignment reporters so much, even though
I think that's more where everything's going to.
Yeah, and I think the way you tackle, covering coronavirus, I was deep editing my last few weeks at Bloomberg before I switched to the Journal. I was deep into editing there on the major stories. I've covered a lot of epidemics before. All that knowledge came back. The political knowledge, the health knowledge, the science knowledge, the ability to just interview random people on the street, because I was also reporting. We were doing everything. That was like the last half of March or the first half of March. And so, yes, right now, if there's something, again, know your audience. If you're back home with your parents in a certain part of California, the story isn't being told relating to coronavirus, learn about it. How do you talk to that audience? How do you build readership or viewership? And then use that to pivot. Again, create your portfolio, but don't worry about, I need to be a science reporter. I need to be a political reporter. No, you just need to be a journalist. And you need to be curious, and you need to hustle. That's it. The rest, you can figure out later. General assignment's a great way to get in. I started off as a crime reporter. You can imagine Damon and Jared also probably started off in more general ways. It makes you valuable to be flexible.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Real quick, I want to say thank you, Tori. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, NABJ, Region 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you all for joining. I know we got to go, but I just want to say that before you wrap. I got to give you
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to wrap up. Well, I guess I can take more. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for joining. Damon Kiso, Andres Martinez, Jared Henderson. Thank you so much. Someone has asked, we can post our email addresses in the chat. Damon posted his. Jared, did you post your email over there?
Done. Whoop.
Andres, can you post yours too? And I want to thank all the regional directors, Sia New Yorker for Region 2, Rod Carter, Region 3, Terry Collins, Region 4, for participating or helping to organize this. Thank you, everybody. So, and time is now 7:59. We got to wrap up. So thank you so much, everyone. Hope this is helpful to you. And this will be recorded and available afterwards. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Stay safe. Be safe. Wash your hands.
Yes.